On a cold January morning in 1947, a mother and her daughter stumbled upon something that would haunt Los Angeles forever. Betty Berzinger thought it was a discarded mannequin lying in a vacant lot. But as she got closer, horror set in. This was no mannequin. This was the brutally murdered body of 22-year-old Elizabeth Short, sliced clean in half at the waist in a precise hemicorporectomy, completely drained of blood and scrubbed spotless. Her face had been carved into a grotesque Glasgow smile that stretched ear to ear. But what they didn't know was that this sadistic display was just the beginning of one of America's most infamous unsolved mysteries. Elizabeth Short, known forever as the Black Dahlia, had dreams bigger than the Hollywood lights she chased. A young woman from a broken Massachusetts family, she had already survived hardship, an absent father, and the struggles of post-war America. She wanted to be a model, an actress, to escape the pain of her past. Instead, her life was cut short in the most vicious way imaginable. The lack of blood at the scene told investigators she had been killed elsewhere. Her body posed like a macabre trophy for the world to see. Marks on her wrists showed she had been tied up and tortured before the final act. The city froze in terror. How could someone do this to an innocent girl full of hope? Her family back east would soon receive the devastating news that would shatter their lives forever. But the true nightmare was only starting. Police swarmed the scene, yet found almost no forensic evidence. No murder weapon, no clear footprints, just a body arranged with surgical precision. And this is where things got darker. The killer had taken his time, treating Elizabeth like a canvas for his twisted art. What kind of monster could commit such an atrocity and leave her there for a mother and child to discover? The answer would torment detectives for decades. The discovery sent shockwaves through Los Angeles. Elizabeth Short's nude, bisected body lay in that vacant lot for hours before police arrived, her lower half positioned a foot away from the torso. Every drop of blood had been drained, suggesting the killer had medical knowledge and a cold, calculating mind. Her intestines were tucked neatly under her buttocks, and small cuts covered her body. But the most disturbing detail was her face, that forced, horrific smile carved into her flesh. And this is where the case took a turn no one expected. Investigators learned Elizabeth had been last seen on January 9th, returning from a trip to San Diego with Robert "Red" Manley, a married salesman. She had checked her luggage at a bus station and vanished into the night. Witnesses placed her at a cocktail lounge, but after that, nothing. Her dreams of stardom had led her into the shadowy underbelly of post-war LA, bouncing between men who promised connections in modeling and film. She was just a young girl trying to survive, carrying the emotional scars of her father's abandonment years earlier. When her mother Phoebe received the call, the family collapsed. The girl who had moved across the country, hoping for a better life, was gone in the most brutal way. Police used her 1943 underage drinking fingerprints to confirm the identity, the only record that survived. Red Manley was brought in immediately. He passed a polygraph and helped identify her belongings, but the questions only multiplied. Who had Elizabeth met after him? The media frenzy exploded, dubbing her the Black Dahlia and splashing gruesome details across headlines before police could control the narrative. But what they didn't know was that the real killer was still walking free, possibly laughing at the chaos. The investigation was just beginning, and the horrors hidden in Elizabeth's final hours would soon point towards suspects no one saw coming. The darkness was closing in. As detectives dug into Elizabeth Short's final days, a pattern of broken dreams and dangerous company emerged. The 22-year-old had spent her last weeks in Los Angeles, charming her way through nightclubs and fleeting relationships, always chasing that big break that never came. She had stayed with Red Manley, but their relationship was casual. After he dropped her off, she was reportedly seen with another man. But who? Initial suspects flooded in fast. Over 150 people would eventually be questioned, from jealous boyfriends to shady Hollywood figures. The crime scene revealed terrifying clues. The precise cuts suggested a killer with surgical skill, possibly a doctor. Rope marks indicated prolonged torture. Elizabeth had been alive during much of the mutilation, a fact that chilled even hardened detectives. Her family's pain deepened with every revelation. Her sisters back in Massachusetts could barely comprehend the savagery inflicted on their vibrant sister. Meanwhile, the press turned the murder into a circus, printing details that compromised the case and terrified the public. What happened next changed everything. When police focused on Elizabeth's connections in the seedy LA underworld, one early person of interest was a nightclub owner with a violent reputation. Others included men she had dated who suddenly had shaky alibis. But the most disturbing lead involved a possible link to the Cleveland torso murders, another series of gruesome dismemberments. Could the same killer have moved west? The emotional weight crushed everyone involved. A young woman full of life, reduced to headlines and horror. Yet despite the frenzy, solid evidence remained elusive. Detectives worked around the clock, but the killer's trail was ice cold. And this is where things got darker. Whispers began about powerful men who might have wanted Elizabeth silenced. The investigation was spiraling, and the truth seemed buried deeper with every passing hour. Someone knew exactly what happened to the Black Dahlia, and they were still out there. The Black Dahlia investigation hit wall after wall. Detectives chased hundreds of tips, but every promising lead dissolved into nothing. Red Manley was cleared, yet the media continued to speculate wildly. Elizabeth's personal life became tabloid fodder. Her relationships, her aspirations, her vulnerabilities. The innocent girl from Massachusetts, who had survived the depression and family abandonment, was now a symbol of Hollywood's deadly underbelly. Her father's earlier desertion and surprise reappearance in California only added layers of family tragedy that made her loss even more devastating. Forensic experts were stunned by the cleanliness of the body and the professional dismemberment. This wasn't a random rage killing. This was methodical, almost ritualistic. But with no DNA technology in 1947, progress stalled. Suspects like local doctors and surgeons were grilled, but alibis held. The police faced intense pressure from the public and superiors to solve it quickly. Yet the killer remained invisible. But the truth was far more disturbing than anyone imagined. The murderer had likely watched the investigation unfold, possibly even inserting himself into it. Elizabeth's sisters and mother lived with unending grief, never getting the closure they desperately needed. Years passed with no answers. The case consumed LAPD resources while the city tried to forget the horror. New witnesses emerged with conflicting stories, further muddying the waters. One tip pointed toward a prominent surgeon, but again, nothing stuck. The emotional toll on investigators was immense, knowing a sadistic killer walked free among them. As months turned into years, the Black Dahlia murder became the ultimate cold case. But what they didn't know was that one man, living in the shadows, held the key. The investigation's dead ends only made the eventual revelations more shocking. Someone close to the case knew the monster responsible, and the silence was deafening. Decades later, new eyes turned to the Black Dahlia files with modern forensic hope. Though original DNA was limited, advancements in technology breathed life into the stagnant case. Old evidence was re-examined under microscopes that didn't exist in 1947. The precise surgical cuts on Elizabeth's body pointed strongly toward someone with advanced medical training. Her torture and posed display suggested a psychopath who enjoyed control and theatricality. The family's pain persisted across generations, grandchildren growing up knowing their relative had been butchered without justice. A major breakthrough came through renewed interest in handwriting analysis and old letters sent to police. The killer had taunted authorities with notes and Elizabeth's missing belongings. But the real escalation came when investigators focused on Dr. George Hodel, a brilliant but deeply disturbed Los Angeles physician. Hodel's own son, Steve, later accused him after finding disturbing evidence in the family home. Photos, recordings, and Hodel's known sadistic tendencies matched the Black Dahlia profile perfectly. And this is where the case took a turn toward one of the most chilling suspects in true crime history. Hodel had connections to Hollywood's dark side and a history of violence against women. He fled the country shortly after intense police scrutiny in the 1950s. But what they didn't know at the time was how close authorities had actually come. Modern audio analysis of secret recordings captured Hodel seemingly confessing to the crime. The psychological weight of Elizabeth's stolen future, her smile, her ambitions, her youth, made every new lead feel personal. Yet even with these breakthroughs, definitive proof remained just out of reach. The monster who carved Elizabeth Short in half might have been identified, but the system failed to deliver justice. The investigation was heating up again, but the final truth still hid in the shadows of time. Cold case teams refused to let Elizabeth Short's murder die. As technology advanced, so did the scrutiny on prime suspects like George Hodel. His son's explosive book detailed years of suspicion, including claims that Hodel had killed his secretary and possibly others. The Black Dahlia's surgical precision perfectly aligned with Hodel's expertise as a doctor. He had even thrown wild parties where dark acts allegedly occurred. The emotional devastation for Short's family continued, an open wound that never healed, passed down through generations waiting for answers. But the case faced constant stagnation. Many leads from the 1940s had been lost or contaminated by the original media circus. Other suspects, including Dr. George Knowlton, also drew attention due to family accusations and strange coincidences. Yet without ironclad evidence, no arrests followed. But what they didn't know was how deeply the killer had embedded himself in Los Angeles society, possibly protected by influence. Elizabeth's life of hardship, moving across the country, fighting for stability, made her vulnerability even more tragic in retrospect. Investigators used new digital tools to reconstruct her final movements. Connections to the Cleveland torso killer were re-examined but never confirmed. The public's fascination never faded, with documentaries and books keeping the pressure on. Still, the killer's identity stayed buried. The psychological horror of her final hours, bound, tortured, bisected while possibly conscious, haunted everyone who studied the files. Time passage only deepened the family's sorrow. Elizabeth never got to live her dreams, and justice remained elusive. As new generations of detectives took over, one thing became clear. The truth was closer than ever, but proving it would require one final, devastating revelation. The case was about to crack wide open once more. New technology brought the Black Dahlia case roaring back to life. Advanced forensic genealogy and enhanced audio analysis of old recordings seemed to implicate George Hodel beyond doubt. In one chilling tape, Hodel reportedly referenced the murder in disturbing terms. His background of alleged incest, violence, and medical brilliance fit the killer's profile like a glove. Elizabeth Short, the hopeful 22-year-old with stars in her eyes, had crossed paths with true evil. Her family's decades of suffering fueled the renewed push for answers. But even these breakthroughs faced hurdles. Hodel had died in 1991, taking many secrets to his grave. Other theories persisted, including cover-ups involving corrupt officials or Hollywood elites. The investigation escalated as private researchers and official cold case units collaborated, poring over every surviving scrap of evidence. What happened next changed everything. When previously unreleased documents surfaced, revealing how close police had come to arresting Hodel in the early 1950s. They had searched his home and found shocking items, yet the case slipped away. The emotional toll remained crushing. Elizabeth's sisters passed away without closure, their pain a testament to the human cost of unsolved murder. The young woman who survived childhood trauma only to meet a fate worse than nightmares deserved better. As modern detectives connected more dots, Hodel's travel history, his sadistic personality, his access to secluded locations, the picture grew terrifyingly clear. Yet the final piece of forensic proof stayed maddeningly absent. The killer had been identified by those closest to the truth, but the legal system demanded more. The shadows of 1947 still concealed the complete story. And this is where things got darker than ever before. The realization that justice for the Black Dahlia might remain forever out of reach. George Hodel emerged as the strongest suspect in the Black Dahlia murder. His son Steve dedicated his life to proving his father's guilt, uncovering evidence that painted a portrait of a monstrous genius. Hodel's surgical skills, his hatred of women, and his presence in Los Angeles during the crime all aligned perfectly. Elizabeth Short had been reduced to a gruesome exhibit by a man who viewed himself above the law. The innocent dreams of a small-town girl crushed under the weight of Hollywood's most depraved predator. Other suspects like Knowlton added layers, but Hodel's profile dominated. Secret recordings and witness statements from the 1940s supported the theory. The family's ongoing grief served as a painful reminder of what was stolen. But the truth was far more disturbing. Hodel may have committed multiple murders, using his position to evade capture for decades. Police in the original investigation had suspected him, but lacked the tools to prove it conclusively at the time. Modern analysis strengthened the case significantly. The hemicorporectomy, the blood drainage, the posed body, all signatures of a killer with medical precision and psychopathic control. Elizabeth's final hours likely involved unimaginable suffering at his hands. As the evidence mounted, the public demanded answers. Yet without an arrest or trial, the case remained in limbo. The emotional scars on everyone touched by this crime ran deep. A young life full of potential, erased in one night of pure evil. The investigation had identified its prime monster, but bringing him to justice across time proved nearly impossible. The Black Dahlia's ghost still cried out for resolution. And the final chapter held one last, heartbreaking twist that would leave investigators stunned. Despite overwhelming circumstantial evidence pointing to George Hodel, no formal arrest or trial ever brought closure to the Black Dahlia case. Hodel died a free man, leaving behind a trail of suspicion but no definitive conviction. The system that failed Elizabeth Short in 1947 continued to fail her family for generations. Her brutal murder, the torture, the bisection, the mocking display, stood as a permanent scar on American true crime history. The young woman who sought love and success in California found only unimaginable pain. New documentaries and books kept the pressure alive, forcing agencies to revisit the files. DNA advancements offered hope, but degraded evidence limited breakthroughs. Other theories persisted, yet Hodel remained the most compelling figure. The psychological weight of the unsolved status tormented retired detectives and Elizabeth's relatives alike. And this is where the case took a turn into eternal mystery. The killer named, but never officially punished. Elizabeth's story became a cautionary tale of Hollywood's dark glamour and the vulnerability of dreamers. Her family never stopped mourning the girl taken too soon. The investigation's long journey from that vacant lot in 1947 to modern cold case units revealed how one sadistic act could echo through time. Suspects identified, evidence re-examined, technology applied, yet the final verdict remained elusive. The monster responsible likely watched the world chase his shadow for years. The emotional engagement of this case never faded because justice was denied. Elizabeth Short deserved better than becoming a legend of horror. As the years rolled on, one truth stood above all others. The Black Dahlia murder remains officially unsolved to this day, a devastating twist in one of true crime's most infamous stories. George Hodel died without facing justice, leaving the Short family without closure after nearly 8 decades of pain. Elizabeth's brutalized body, discovered that January morning, continues to symbolize the worst humanity can inflict on innocence. The girl who survived abandonment and hardship only to be destroyed in Los Angeles' shadows never received the ending she deserved. Her dreams of stardom ended in a vacant lot, her smile carved by a monster. Every lead, every suspect, every technological breakthrough brought investigators close, but the final proof slipped away. The emotional devastation ripples still, through her surviving relatives, through the detectives who dedicated careers to her case, and through a public forever fascinated by the horror. What happened to Elizabeth Short exposed the glitz and rot beneath Hollywood's golden era. The killer's identity may be known to those who studied the evidence deeply, yet the legal system offered no verdict, no trial, no satisfaction. But what they didn't know all those years ago was that this case would become eternal, a reminder that some evils transcend time. Elizabeth's life, though short, touched millions through the enduring mystery. Her family's tears, the public's outrage, the investigators' frustration, all fuel the demand for truth. The Black Dahlia stands as both victim and legend, her story pushing us to never stop seeking justice for the silenced. The sadistic murder that shocked the world in 1947 still demands answers. And in the end, the greatest twist is that the monster may have won the battle, but the fight for Elizabeth Short's memory continues. Her name will never be forgotten. The search for complete closure goes on.